Here, in this pause, you did not plan to be here. You did not tell yourself, "Tonight I will listen to something that touches me." Your thumb slowed before your mind explained why. Your breathing softened without asking permission. Something inside you leaned forward, quietly, as if it recognized the moment meant for it. This was not random. There is a stillness that only arrives when the unseen is already at work. A small opening in the rush of your thoughts where the world feels a little farther away and your heart feels a little closer. You may not have named it. You may not have noticed it fully, but you felt it. And that feeling is often how Allah begins. There is a reason this part feels heavier than the rest. You have been carrying a strange sense of drift lately. Not sadness exactly, not fear. Just a quiet question that follows you through your days. You wake up and the shape of your life feels slightly unfamiliar. You go through your routines, speak to the same people, move through the same places, but something in you feels like it no longer fits the way it used to. You may have told yourself you are lost. But what if this feeling is not about losing your way at all? What if it is about being loosened from a path that no longer belongs to you? There is a moment in a person's life when the grip on the old begins to soften. Not because they decided to let go, but because the soul itself has grown tired of holding on. What once felt solid begins to feel thin. What once felt important begins to feel distant. What once filled your attention now barely reaches your heart. This is not confusion. This is detachment in progress, and it rarely feels comfortable. You may have felt this without knowing what it meant. It often starts quietly, a conversation that no longer pulls you in, a goal that used to excite you but now feels hollow, a place that once felt like home but now feels like a room you are only passing through. You do not argue with it. You do not announce it. You just notice the space growing between you and the things you used to cling to. This is how the unseen often moves before the visible follows. There is a reason this next feeling feels so personal. People and habits and small pieces of your life may have begun to fall away. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, just enough for you to notice the absence. Someone stops reaching out, a routine breaks, a desire fades, and you are left standing in a quieter version of your world, wondering what you did wrong. But what if nothing was taken from you? What if space was being made? There are seasons when Allah does not add, He clears. Not to punish, not to leave you empty, but to give your heart room to breathe in a different direction. Sometimes what feels like loss is simply the sound of a door closing so softly you only notice it when the room becomes still. The unseen often works like this. It removes before it reveals. It quiets before it guides. It makes room in the soul long before it fills the hands. You may have felt this as a kind of tiredness. Not the tiredness that comes from a long day, the deeper kind. The kind that sleep does not fix. The kind that settles in your chest when you realize you cannot return to who you used to be. Even if you wanted to. You still move. You still function. But the old ways of caring, chasing, and reacting feel heavier than they once did. The noise of the world feels louder than it needs to be. The small dramas, the endless comparisons, the constant reaching for more, they no longer pull at you the same way. This next feeling is one most people don't recognize. It is the tiredness of outgrowing yourself. This is what it feels like when Allah begins to move the heart before He changes the path. The inside shifts first, the outside follows later. You may still be standing in the same place, living the same life, surrounded by the same faces. But the person inside that life is quietly becoming someone else, and that can feel lonely. There is a strange kind of isolation that comes with this phase, not because you are alone, but because fewer things reach you where they used to. You may still laugh, still speak, still show up, but there is a part of you that has stepped back, watching your own life from a small distance. This was not random. There are times when Allah changes direction without signs, without announcements, without explanations. Not through a sudden event you can point to, but through a quiet pull you feel in your chest that you cannot name. You may have felt it when you looked at a path you were certain about and suddenly felt unsure. When a plan you were building lost its weight. When a future you imagined stopped feeling like it belonged to you. This is not the loss of clarity. This is the beginning of redirection. The unseen often moves before the visible follows. You are being guided without being told where, and that can feel like standing in the middle of a room after the lights go out. You know the room is still there. You know the door still exists. But for a moment, all you can do is stand still and let your eyes adjust. This is the waiting phase, the space between who you were and who you are becoming. It is one of the most uncomfortable places a heart can live. Nothing feels stable. The old no longer fits. The new has not yet arrived. You are not who you were, but you cannot yet see who you will be. This is where most people try to rush. They grab the first thing that feels familiar, the first distraction that fills the quiet, the first path that promises to bring back the feeling of certainty. But this space is not meant to be filled quickly. It is meant to be held. There is a reason this part feels heavier than the rest. In this space, Allah often works in ways you cannot track, not on the surface of your life, but underneath it, like roots spreading in dark soil, like foundations being laid where no one is looking, like seeds resting in the ground long before anything breaks through the surface. You may feel like nothing is happening, but the unseen is rarely still. There are changes taking place that do not announce themselves, strength being formed that does not show yet, clarity being built that has not found words yet, protection being placed around you that you will only recognize in hindsight. The night does not look like morning, but it carries it. You may have felt moments lately where you wanted answers, clear signs, a reason you could explain to yourself or to someone else. But instead, all you received was a feeling, a sense, a quiet knowing that something is shifting, even if you cannot say what. This is how Allah often keeps the heart close, not by giving it a map, but by teaching it to trust the step in front of it. Trust, in this sense, is not something you force. It is something you rest into, like leaning back instead of standing tense, like letting the weight of your questions settle into something larger than your own understanding. The unseen often moves before the visible follows. There is a softness in this stage that does not get enough attention, a gentleness in being held without being told, in being guided without being shown the whole path, in being rearranged without being asked for permission. You may have felt this as a quiet return, not to a place, not to a routine, but to a sense of being held. Moments when the noise fades just enough for you to breathe differently, when your chest feels lighter for no clear reason, when a small calm settles over you in the middle of a day that looks the same as all the others. Allah touches the heart before He changes the path. And sometimes, that touch is simply peace with not knowing yet. You do not need all the answers to be safe. You do not need the full picture to be guided. You do not need to understand the design to be part of it. There is a reason this next feeling feels so quiet. It is the soft arrival, not of clarity, not of certainty, but of acceptance. The kind that does not argue with the moment, the kind that does not rush the process, the kind that lets the unseen move at its own pace. You may still have questions tomorrow. You may still feel unsure next week. You may still look at your life and wonder how all the pieces will ever make sense together. But for now, in this moment, there is something else available to you. Rest. Not sleep, not escape, but the kind of rest that comes from knowing you are not being forgotten in the middle of the unknown. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not drifting without direction. You are being rearranged. This was not random. The unseen often moves before the visible follows. Allah touches the heart before He changes the path. Nothing in your life is shifting without purpose, even when you cannot see the pattern yet. So let this moment be what it is. A small pause in the noise, a quiet breath in the middle of the day, a reminder that you are not walking alone, even when the road feels unfamiliar. You are not lost. You are being rearranged. And nothing in your life is moving without His command.